We begin with a Fox News alert. Tropical storm Hermine is barreling up the East Coast at this hour after making landfall early this morning as a Category 1 storm in Florida's Big Bend area, packing winds up to 80 miles an hour and becoming the first hurricane to hit that state in more than a decade. Widespread flooding a major concern with the storm surge, up to 12 feet in some areas and nearly 2 feet of rain on top of that. The powerful storm knocking down trees and damaging property, killing at least one person and leaving tens of thousands in the dark. Senior meteorologist Janice Dean is live in the Fox Extreme Weather Center, and she has the latest. Where is it headed next, Janice?
We are not done yet, and actually we could see the strongest storm we've seen thus far this weekend for the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. So there's the tropical storm right now, 50-mile-per-hour sustained winds. Look at the rainfall estimates, close to 2 feet of rain when it made landfall across the Big Bend of Florida. Watching the potential for not only flooding, battering waves, and tropical storm force winds, but tornadoes. Tornado watch until 4 p.m. locally for parts of the Carolinas up towards Virginia, and then the forecast precipitation anywhere from 4 to 6 inches plus for the Carolinas up towards the Mid-Atlantic. And we certainly have flood advisories posted for the areas that are going to be seeing the effects from this storm. Here is the track. Pay close attention if you live across the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, because we have good indications of what's going to happen on Saturday as the storm is expected to move out into the Atlantic. And then watch what happens Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We call this the cone of uncertainty. And there's a good reason we call it that, because as of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we are very uncertain of the forecast. And look at this, hurricane force winds near the center of this storm. If this storm moves to the west, we're going to be dealing with a pretty major event all along from the Delmarva up towards New England, with maybe a tropical storm, an extra tropical storm, a hybrid of both of those. So as you can see, as we head into Sunday, we have good indications of what's going to happen, but look at this, just a whole bunch of squiggly lines like my 5-year-old started to draw on the map here. So the bottom line here is, ladies, if you live across the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, you need to pay very close attention to the forecast. Your beach weekend, Labor Day, is not going to be a good one, unfortunately, and we have tropical storm warnings in effect for the Delmarva, and then watches that extend into Connecticut, including Long Island and New York. I will be busy. I'll keep you posted. But the bottom line is, please, please, please pay attention to the forecasts as we head into the weekend.
Yes, we know that you're going to stay on top of that, and we will too. Janice Dean, thank you so much for that.
You got it.
Welcome. This is Outnumbered. I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Fox Business Network's Dagan McDowell, Democratic strategist Julie Roginski, reporter for National Review Online Catherine Timpf, and today's #OneLuckyGuy co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend, Tucker Carlson, and he is wildly outnumbered.
Wildly but comfortable being outnumbered.
You got a new toupee. It looks just for us. That's so nice.
Why, thank you for noticing, Dagan.
You have awesome hair. Come on.
But you're right to notice, not actually mine.
Oh, now I've got you. That's a debate strategy. Now I've got you back on your heels.
So
maybe he's wearing that cone of uncertainty that Janice Dean was talking about there.
I think his hair is a cone of uncertainty for everybody.
All right, well, that was fun. We go to the race for the White House now, in the bitter Twitter war erupting between Donald Trump and Mexico's president over who's going to pay for the border wall following the GOP nominee's visit to Mexico and his fiery speech on immigration. Trump tweeting emphatically, quote, "Mexico will pay for the wall," to which Mexico's leader replied, quote, "I repeat what I said personally, Mr. Trump. Mexico would never pay for a wall." All this is some major Latino surrogates for Trump stepping down, and the Trump campaign setting a record one-day halt in donations following his Wednesday night speech. In the meantime, the candidate himself on the O'Reilly factor signaling his top goals on tackling illegal immigration and appearing to acknowledge the realities of such a massive undertaking. Listen.
We're going to build the wall. We're going to get rid of all of the bad players that are here, the gang members, the gang leaders, the drug dealers, all of the cartel people. After that takes place, we're going to sit back. We're going to assess the situation. We're going to see where we are, because we'll have people in the country that, you know, that have come in illegally. We're going to sit back. We're going to assess the situation.
Ooh, a lot to drill down on there. Tucker, my friend, let me start with you. The Twitter war between the presidents. Is it unbecoming after such I mean, it's classic Trump. It's kind of...
It is classic Trump. Here's the difference, though. I mean, first of all, I think Twitter diminishes anyone who participates in it, just my view.
Uh-oh.
And it certainly diminishes people of the stature of Trump and the president of Mexico. There's no reason. There are many ways they can express their views, right? So there's no reason for them to do this. But in this specific case, it's a disaster because his speech was so successful and because he made point after point that was basically irrefutable. They were all correct. They're consistent with American history, with American values. And this kind of behavior, focusing on that one point, who's going to pay for the wall, essentially an immaterial, irrelevant point, allows his detractors to also focus on that point and to ignore the many important things that he said. That speech was the best moment, I thought, of his entire candidacy.
Yeah.
And so why take from it by fighting on Twitter?
Well, this is what Julie has actually been talking about. Rather than keeping his eyes on the road, he's got his right side tires off on the shoulder, and he's going to get a flat. He's not paying attention to what he's doing.
Yes.
And I look at all the issues that he should be focusing on. Can we talk about the economy? It is the #1 issue for American voters, according to the latest Fox News poll. We have weaker than expected job growth. The wage growth is slowing. The economy is barely growing. Worst recovery since 1949. And he is in a dead heat with Hillary Clinton on the issue in the latest poll.
But he addressed those issues in his speech.
He's not hitting it. He has lost double-digit percentages in terms of how he rates on the economy.
Let me argue the other side for a second, then you tell me where I went wrong. It is a bit like he's having his cake and eating it too. He gives the speech. Some people are happy with that. He goes on Twitter. Other people like that. He comes out and says that, you know, in one hand, he's going to deport 5 to 11 million people. Then Reince Priebus comes on earlier on our network saying that's not what he said. He said that after he deports the criminals, then he's going to take a step back and see where we are. He's kind of saying everything to everyone at this point. So maybe everyone's happy with what they're hearing.
Well, I think actually nobody's happy. Everybody's very confused. You need a consistent message. I mean, if you're running for president, if you're running for dog catcher, whatever you're running for, you need to have a consistent message. And his message is so muddled. The fact that he's getting into a Twitter war with a head of state is, to me, just unbelievable. And again, you know, Dagan for president, because Dagan just laid out what he should be laying out. She just laid out the entire Republican Party platform as it should be repeated over Twitter, as it should be repeated over social media, and that's not what he's doing.
It is confusing because people are just so quick to say, oh, look, here's the pivot. Like when he went to Mexico, he was very calm, very kind, I loved it. It was great. And then that night, the speech in Arizona, very different dude that we're watching. And I'm sure a speech like that fires up the base, but the base is already fired up. He needs to expand that a little bit. And I think the tone interferes with him being able to do that sometimes, because some of the things he's saying, not that radical, like saying that if you're here illegally, you go to jail, you shouldn't be able to come out and shoot someone's kid. I think everybody would agree with that. But that sometimes gets distracted by the way that he talks about things. And this mass deportation thing, I don't think anybody really wants that. Liberals obviously don't want it. Conservatives shouldn't want it, seeing as the kind of police state that would have to create. I think he really needs to back away from that.
Tucker, you made a great point, which I can't believe more people aren't making. Who pays for the wall is so ridiculous. It's semantics. I mean, you could do it with tariffs. You could hold back aid. There's a million different ways it could be done, one way or the other.
Over $100 billion a year in savings just from controlling the uncontrolled flow of people into this country illegally. So there's just that. But he made a very strong economic case. And you may be right, Kat, that his tone obscures it and people can't hear what he's saying. Read the speech. He makes the case. Hillary Clinton says she's running on wages. Really? One of the great depressors of wages is a surfeit of labor. If you've got too many people at the bottom end of the labor pool, wages go down. It's supply and demand. It's the most basic of all economic principles. That's a powerful economic case.
If you're speaking to the vast majority of voters out there about the economy and their own personal financial situation, you have to broaden it out beyond immigration when you're talking about it. He needs to look at her and say she's promising more of what President Obama has given us in 7.5 years, but better results. And that is idiocy. That's all he has to say. I'm proposing something different. She is not. And he misses the boat on it.
But here's the problem. First of all, you have a Fox News poll that just came out. 19%. 19 want the deportation that he's talking about. 77% want a path.
But he's not talking about that. He's not talking about deporting everybody.
Yeah, well, now he's not. Before he was. I'm confused. Where is he? Is he not backing away from his pledge of the last year to not mass
clearly
deport?
on the take a pause after we send the criminals out of the country.
I don't know. Well, I don't know what that means. Does that mean they're going to continue to live in the shadows, work illegally, and there's no path to legalization, which is the status quo right now? What is he proposing? And secondly, you know, when we talk about this border wall, this is a question I really wish somebody could answer for me, or at least ask Donald Trump. The Rio Grande, the river, is a huge divider of the border between Mexico and the United States. Where are we building this wall? In the middle of the Rio Grande?
We're putting sharks and gators in there.
Seriously, is it going to be like lasers with sharks like Austin Powers? Is it going to be on the Mexican side of the border? No, but literally, is it going to be on the Mexican side of the border?
Can that possibly be the problem with this? I mean, really?
It's a legitimate. It's not. It's a legitimate question.
We begin with the philosophical
Where's the wall
question,
going to be?
which does the country have a right to have secure borders?
Where are you going to put the border?
Look, the Rio Grande is dry. I hunt down there a lot. It's dry in a lot of places.
So you're going to put it in the middle of the Rio Grande?
It doesn't matter. These are logistical questions that are immaterial.
They're very
Only
material.
To engineers are these meaningful questions.
No, Tucker, they're not. Because if you're talking about putting it in the middle of a river, that's one thing. If you're talking about putting it on the Mexican side of the border,
look, the left opposes the wall because they don't want to control the flow of people into the country because they vote Democrat. Like, let's be honest.
I would love to hear the answer to that question. It's not a technical question. It's a sovereignty question.
In that speech, he firmed up some waffling that had been coming out of his campaign about immigration, and then gets into some Twitter battle with the head of state. That's where he goes wrong. That's where the campaign
that's what
comes
people on
apart.
MTV do, not people who are running for president of the United
And then
States.
today, he gets into a crazy psychoanalysis of Mika Brzezinski over at MSNBC when he should be talking about what Dagan was just saying.
But,
that's
on the merits, he might not be that far off.
Right.
I mean, on the merits, if you're running to be head of state.
And I take great pride that I don't even know how to pronounce that woman's name.
Well, I know her father. It's Zbigniew Brzezinski.
All right.
Yeah.
The State Department now going to release all of Hillary Clinton's schedules from her time as Secretary of State before Election Day. And now even more evidence of the blurry lines between the State Department and the Clinton Foundation, whether all of this is going to hurt her campaign for the White House. Plus, he was a star Stanford swimmer before he was convicted of raping an unconscious woman. Today, Brock Turner getting out of jail, having served only half of the 6-month sentence that sparked so much outrage.
More and more trouble brewing for Hillary Clinton. Hard to know where to start. Well, the State Department is now saying it will release all of the Democratic nominees' schedules from her days at state before Election Day. That's ahead of the original timeline. Meantime, in response to a lawsuit from Tucker Carlson's own Daily Caller, a federal judge is ordering the State Department to release security training records for Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin within 2 weeks or face depositions. Fox News has confirmed that Hillary Clinton skipped a cybersecurity briefing back in 2011.
That explains it.
Yeah. All this as newly released emails show a foundation executive requesting help from the State Department to get diplomatic passports. They were never issued, but the Clinton camp says that the request was related to a Bill Clinton emergency trip to North Korea to negotiate the release of 2 Americans. Judicial Watch says that the rules would only have allowed such a passport for President Clinton, not the staffers also on the request. And now, Vice President Joe Biden dodging questions about the foundation.
Do you think Americans should be concerned at all about the ethics of the Clinton Foundation? Has the Clinton Foundation always been 100% ethical in your view?
Look, I think the Clinton Foundation, like all foundations, has found themselves in a position where things are changing, and I think she's going to change and adjust to the realities of how complicated it's all become.
And is she clearing herself up enough for that? Should the foundation stop taking foreign donations now?
Well, I think you'll see them stop taking foreign donations.
Tucker, it's a slow bleed. It's a little bit day by day, but will this be fatal to her candidacy?
Well, you take 3 steps back. You don't have to work for the federal government. You don't have to have a position of authority over the rest of us. But once you accept that job, your work product needs to be available to us. We pay for it. It's not your property. It's the property of American taxpayers. That's the fact of working in the executive branch of government. And so the fact that we had to file a suit, that a bunch of different news organizations have had to file lawsuits and go through at great expense this effort to get records that belong to us is an outrage. And it reveals what we already know, which is a lot of the people in positions of power in the government, in this administration and others, don't really believe in democracy. They don't actually think you have a right to know what they're doing. And that is an outrage, and we should be mad about it.
Because they abuse the power. I mean, I know that you've looked into these, I was looking at passports.
The diplomatic passport thing. Okay, so you can only have a diplomatic passport if you are an employee of the government and you're going on official business. So you're supposed to, as an employee of the State Department, show up with your travel plans and your tickets and say, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm going to do. I need a diplomatic passport. Instead, if you're part of the Clinton Foundation and you're Doug Band, you can send an email to Huma Abedin instead and say, hey, guess what? We need a bunch of these. Okay. May have been for a good cause, which is what their argument is, but we need a bunch of these. And she goes, okay, let me see what I can do. Let me tell you what's wrong with that. She's supposed to be working at the State Department. She is doing favors for the Clinton Foundation. She is being paid also by the Clinton Foundation. She is being paid also by Teneo, which is a consulting group where they hire friends of the Clintons to do whatever they need, like Chief of Police here in New York, who just left office and is now working for Teneo, and then coincidentally is going out and saying really nice things about Hillary Clinton and how she would be great to be the chief law enforcement officer. Well, he happens to be paid behind the scenes. Bill Bratton, he's a great guy, but this is what he's doing by Teneo, this giant.
Listen, the polls are tightening, and she is still considered more untrustworthy than Donald Trump, even in the Fox News polls, Julie. This is hurting her.
Well, first of all, let's go back to the Teneo Doug Band instance. Had he gotten those diplomatic passports, you would have had a huge story.
You know what they did instead? They went without having anything stamped. They decided the way around it was to travel to North Korea and have no passport
Wait a second, but let's go back to the North Korea thing. By the way, in terms of releasing her schedules, I agree she should have released them. In terms of the things that they did with the Clinton Foundation, I agree. They should have never taken those foreign donations when she became Secretary of State. On this particular issue, you don't often hear me defend Teneo and Doug Band, but on this particular issue, you have a former president in the United States in his capacity as a private citizen going to North Korea to negotiate for the release of 2 hostages with whom he was able to come home. He's not traveling alone. He's traveling with Doug Band and 1 or 2 other aides. All of them.
They're comfortable asking their person in the State Department who they're paying for a favor. That's the point.
To go to North.
It doesn't matter what they're asking for. They're asking for an illegal favor from someone inside the State Department that they're paying.
What Doug Band asked for is Doug Band's problem. What Huma Abedin did is Huma Abedin in the State Department's problem, and she did nothing wrong. The difference is he could ask, I could ask you for the moon right now. It doesn't mean that you're going to give it to me. She never did any favors.
You're not paying me. You're not paying me.
Even if I were paying you,
I just don't know that any of this really matters. Because I know they're tightening. The polls are tightening nationally, but in the key states, Donald Trump really still has a long way to go. I can't imagine, based on everything we already know, what would have to be in these emails, in these schedules, to have people actually care. Like, I don't know, she missed the security briefing because she was throwing a bag of puppies into a river. Like, would that be enough? I don't even know. People are, it's this slow drip of it is making people say, oh, emails, I think I already heard about that. Or, oh, it's sort of more of the same thing. And she laughs it all off. It's sickening that people don't care more, but I really don't think they do.
When would the American people, though, find abuse of power repugnant enough to say, I don't want that person running the country?
It's not going to get better when she has all the power of controlling the free world. It's going to get worse. People should be thinking about that, but rather than actually looking into these things you're talking about, it's complicated. You have to learn things. How much easier to just say, oh, I heard that Donald Trump's a sexist. I don't like that. I'm not going to vote for him. And sadly, I think that's what a lot more people are doing.
You know when they'll start caring? When Donald Trump actually starts putting forth a message that they can